Hi Booktube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today I'll be doing the mid-year freakout tag. It's a bit of a Booktube tradition now where you just look at the first half of the year and you reflect, as some other people have said as they've done this recently. You can kind of tell that some of the prompts here are sort of aimed maybe more towards people who focus on sort of young adult books and things like that, which is fine. But there might be one or two that aren't quite applicable to me and what I've been reading this year. But we'll jump right in. The first prompt is the best book you've read so far in 2024. And I've been reading a lot of really, really good books, and I've been really quite enjoying a lot of what I've been reading, um, even if all of them I'm not, giving 5 stars. I'm not putting all of them up on a pedestal, but generally speaking, I'm really enjoying the bulk of what I'm reading, which is really nice. And yeah, the best book, or at least my favourite book, the book that's sort of stayed with me the most, is actually the first book that I finished this year back in January. I think I actually started it in December. I can't remember. But it's the Trial by Franz Kafka. And just certain scenes are, um, I don't know, they've been etched into my brain now, and have, yeah, just really stayed with me. Particularly, there's two bits towards the end. There's a really eerie scene in a cathedral, which I just love. That was an amazing chapter in here, and the last chapter as well is just an incredible last chapter as well. So yeah, my favourite thing so far has been The Trial by Franz Kafka. And then the best sequel that you've read so far in 2024. I don't tend to read that many series normally. However, from what I can tell, I've read one sequel so far, and that's Balthazar by Lawrence Durrell. This is the second book in his Alexandria Quartet. I'm currently reading the third book, and it's about um, just a sort of fairly disparate cast of characters in Alexandria in the years leading up to World War II, and it's about the complicated relationships that they have with each other, the sort of politics that's sort of simmering underneath everything, and the further you get into the series, the more the politics kind of rise up. But this book is essentially an interesting idea for a sequel because it's almost like a rewriting of the first book. The narrator of the first book has been told by someone that what he'd put in the first book is only one side of things, and actually there was a lot more going on that he never picked up on. So a really interesting idea. In terms of just the general feel, I much preferred the first book, Justine, but it's been a wonderful experience so far. Number three is a new release that you've read. No, sorry, a new release that you haven't read but you want to, and this is the only one where I've not got an answer for it. I'm just not really thinking about um, new releases at the moment. I might happen to pick up some newly released books at some point, but it's not something I'm paying much attention to at the moment. Number four is the most anticipated release for the rest of the year. For that, I've put down a book that's been out for a while in its original language, but the English translation is only coming out in the UK, I think in September, and that's The Empusium by Olga. I'm going to try and read my handwriting, by Olga Tokvizuk, or sorry, Torkazuk. I'm terribly sorry for butchering the name, but she wrote books of Jacob and drive your plough over the bones of the dead and things like that. So she's got a fair bit of attention. I'm curious about this because I've been told it's kind of a rewriting or um, a sort of dialogue with The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. And so for that reason alone, I'm quite curious about it. Number 5 is Biggest Disappointment. I don't have any huge disappointments so far this year, but the closest thing to a disappointment I have is probably A Confession and Other Religious Writings by Leo Tolstoy. I wasn't particularly, I wasn't expecting fireworks with this book, and there was plenty of interesting stuff in here. And I read it as a buddy read with Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics, and reading it with him was a lot of fun. But essentially, this is a lot of the um, sort of annoying stuff from Tolstoy in his novels, the philosophizing and moralizing, um, just really, really condensed. And so that's all you have here. And picking up a book like that, that's what you're going to get. And so I'm not going to be too down on it. But that's at least the closest thing to a disappointment I've had this year. Number 6 is Biggest Surprise, and for me, that is Earthsea, the first 4 books by Ursula K. Le Guin, and it was surprising for me in a few ways. I think I kind of knew I was going to enjoy it. Lots of people love these books, and a lot of people I trust the opinion of really love these books as well. So I knew there was going to be something in here that I would like. It was just, I don't know, it was surprising to find so much to like, even though, I don't know, it's hard to put it into words, but firstly, the writing was just lovely, and I just really enjoyed the tone and the feel of these books, and they were much deeper than I was expecting to be. I was expecting them to be as well. And like the Trial by Kafka as well, there are just certain scenes, certain places, but certain settings from the book that have sort of stayed with me, and I'm still exploring, still thinking about, even though I finished it a few months ago. Certainly, there'll be books I'll be revisiting. It's 4 novels in here, and I'll certainly be reading more Ursula K. Le Guin in the future. Number 7 is a favourite new author. So this could be a debut author or an author who's new to me. And I've decided to go with a new to me author, someone I've read for the first time this year, and that's Lawrence Durrell, so the author of the Alexandria Quartet, and I've just been loving his writing. I knew I was going to find at least something I liked in Justine, but it was just much richer than I was expecting it to be. So I've been really, really enjoying it. And as I said, I'm currently reading the 3rd book, Mount Olive, about 2/3 of the way through, so it might be done with it quite soon. Number 8 is Newest Fictional Crush. I often take this a little literally, so it's not necessarily somebody that I, a fictional character that I fancy. Last year I brought up, is it Marmeladov from Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, who gets hit by a horse and carriage. This year we have a similar event, and I went with, and again I have to try and read my handwriting, Forchelevo, I want to say, from Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. He's the character who, quite early on in the book, he gets trapped underneath a carriage, underneath a cart, and the carriage is on mud, and so he's stuck underneath it. I think his leg has been crushed, and he's probably just going to get completely crushed by the carriage. And then Jean Valjean is the only man who is brave enough to go in and lift the cart, and he's the only man who's probably strong enough as well. And he saves this guy's life, and he turns up again later on in the novel and he's one of the characters featured in one of my favourite scenes in the book, which is really, really funny, and it involves somebody getting trapped in a coffin. And so, with a bit of rule bending, that's my newest fictional crush. Number 9 is newest favourite character. This is the only prompt where I think I'm using a book that I reread this year. I've been doing my best to go off first impressions, but with this, I'm going back to a book I've read before and I reread back in January, and that's War and Peace by Tolstoy. And the newest favorite character was Denisov, who he's not he's not the most obscure of the minor characters, but he's definitely not a major character. He's one of the main character's best friends. He's an officer, and he's just a really good guy. He can party, but he's also just really lovely, and he's dependable. And as the book was going on, he was, at least for me, he was just becoming more and more likable. And every time he turned up, if we hadn't seen him for quite some time, not sure if he's still alive, and then suddenly there he is, and it's like running into one of your best friends in the street, and you maybe haven't seen each other for a while, and you just want to catch up, and it felt like that whenever he turned up in the story, and so it was just delightful to see a character in a new light, as I was rereading the book, because I didn't barely notice him at all the first time I read it. Number 10, a book that made me cry. This one, I don't think any books have really made me cry this year, but this is a book that made me feel a lot of complicated emotions, dealing with a lot of complicated issues, and it's one I've just finished. It's From the Holy Mountain by William Dalrymple. It's a travel book. He's following in the steps of a Byzantine monk in the what was the Byzantine Empire. So he starts off on Mount Athos in Greece, and he just goes right the way around the Mediterranean, so through Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, all the way around to Egypt. And in a lot of these countries, when he was writing in the mid-90s and still today, there was a lot of political unrest, a lot of different factions all kind of fighting against each other, and a lot of different people groups where life is very hard and they're maybe being exploited, and they don't know whether their particular community is going to survive for very long. And yeah, again, that a lot of that is still going on. A lot of it is different from country to country, and there are similarities between some of these issues and some of these conflicts, and yet they've all got their own particular sort of nuances, and a lot of them are still going on today. Some of them have developed, mainly for worse, not really for better. And so it got me thinking about all of that, and a lot of that is still in the news at the moment. And so, without going into too much detail, that's a book that made me feel a lot of complicated emotions. Number 12, number 11. Sorry, I skipped one. A book that made you happy, and for that I've gone with Don Quixote by Cervantes. Mainly because on the whole, it's just a really wholesome book. I just found it just lovely, and there are a lot of jokes at certain characters' expense, but it never feels cruel to me. There's always a wholesomeness to it, and even as the book gets a little more tragic towards the end, I think the tragedy you feel it so strongly because it's sort of contrasted with this wholesomeness that you've sort of got used to as the book's been going on. And it's funny. So Don Quixote is a book that made me happy, and to say that it's the book that I was reading in the first month after my daughter was born as well. And so it's going to be that book that, when I'm looking at the bookshelf and just sort of reading the spines, when I see it, there are going to be a lot of sort of memories that sort of suddenly pop out. And then number third, no, I'm constantly skipping prompts at the moment. Number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year, or the most beautiful book that you've received. And for this one, I've gone with this. This is The Collected Fictions of Jorge Luis Borges, one of my favourite writers. This is just a lovely Penguin Deluxe edition with deckled edges that I really like, and the French flaps. I've already got another edition of this, but I just really wanted this edition, so now I have two. And there is just something I love about the simplicity of the cover. It's quite austere, maybe, but quite mysterious as well. And I'm not sure if you can make it out. There's this little detailing here, which is sort of embossed, which I really like, and it's not a sort of labyrinth shape, but it makes me, with all these lines here, it makes me think of labyrinths, and that's sort of something that comes up all the time in Borges. So I think that is the most beautiful book that has turned up this year. And then the last prompt, number 13, is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And for this one, I don't like the word need, but I'll go along with it. The books I'd like to read by the end of the year. There are 3 books that are left on I made a video, 10 books for summer, and there were 10 books I wanted to read really before the end of September. I've read 7 of them, so there are 3 more to go. And they are The Leopard by Giuseppe de Lampedusa. There is Tender as the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And out of the 3 of them, the one I think I'll get to next, New Selected Stories by Thomas Mann. And I think I'll be reading that next month. And so there are 3 that hopefully will be done, not even by the end of the year, but by the end of the summer. And then there are a couple of sort of reading projects that I've set for myself. So one of them is to read The Divine Comedy. I started last August, and I finished the second part, Purgatory, back in January, I think. And then I sort of paused it, so I'm looking to start it up again. And I've just started reading Paradise, which from the last time I read it, it was the most complicated. It was very moving, but I just had absolutely no idea what was going on. And so I'll be going at quite a slow pace. But luckily there are lots of helpful sort of notes and summaries just in this edition as well. And so hopefully I'll be able to get a better grasp of what's going on. But I'll be going slowly, but should be done well before the end of the year. And then another reading project that I started ages ago, and just haven't carried on with it, was to read the My Struggle series by Carlo Knausgaard. I read A Death in the Family about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and really enjoyed it and wanted to carry on. But then I picked up Proust, and I didn't want to be reading Knausgaard and Proust at the same time. And so I put Knausgaard on pause, and then I read Proust. And then, it's crazy how quickly time is going. Nearly a year ago now, I finished Proust, and I still haven't picked up Knausgaard. And so I want to at least make some progress on the My Struggle series before the end of the year. And so the next one for me to read is A Man in Love. And I've picked up all the rest of the volumes, and so I'm hoping that I'll get a few more of them read before the year is over. A book I'm reading at the moment that I might have to put on pause just because it's really big, and I do this sometimes with big poetry books. I'm reading the complete poems of Emily Dickinson, and I'm only about a quarter of the way through the poems, if that. And the issue I sometimes have with the complete poems of a certain poet is you just sort of it's not that there's anything wrong with the poet, but if you're just spending so much time with them, you just need something else. You need a different voice. And I had this issue with when I was reading the complete poems of William Blake, that when I got to about halfway through, I just put it on pause, picked something else up, and then a little while later, then got back to William Blake with renewed energy. And so I might do the same thing with Emily Dickinson. Once I get to about the halfway point, I'll put her on pause and read some other poets, and then come back to her. But certainly, I'd love to have finished the complete poems of Emily Dickinson before the year is over. And then two more. These are authors that I just want to get to know a bit better. I've only read a handful by each of them, and the two books here are quite short, so it should be very manageable to fit them in. The first is Virginia Woolf. This is To the Lighthouse. Out of her novels, all I've read so far is Mrs. Dalloway, and so I would just like to get to know her a bit better. And I'm really intrigued by To the Lighthouse, and have been intrigued for a long time, and so there's no good reason as to why I still haven't read it. So hopefully before the end of the year, I'll finally have read it. And then there's Laszlo Krasznahorkai, or I think because he's Hungarian, it should be Krasznahorkai Laszlo, I think, because they say the surname first over there. This is The World Goes On, a collection of sort of interconnected short stories. And I've picked up loads of his books, because I've read a couple and really liked them, and just haven't picked up any more for a while. And I've just been feeling it's a shame, and I've been feeling a pull towards his writing for quite some time. And yet it's just been so long since I've read anything by him, like I think a couple of years. And so hopefully The World Goes On will be the next thing that I read by him. But that's it. So that is my sort of look back at the year so far. A few sort of hopeful plans for the rest of the year. Let me know how your year is going, and if you make videos and you would like to give this a go, then feel free to consider yourself tagged and give it a go. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.